After the session, you'll be able to know the use and steps to use the winding strips, plane the cross grain, plane the edge, test the accuracy of flatness, test the accuracy of squareness, test the accuracy of the inside squareness, test the accuracy of twistness on surface. Let's first go through the job sequence and then the skill sequence. Let's start. Use of winding strips. Winding strip is a pair of perfectly straight pieces of timber with parallel edges. Usually they are about 375 mm long and 35 mm wide and 20 mm thick. They are used to test the flatness of any wooden surface. For testing the job for flatness, one stick is placed across one end and the other stick is placed across the other end of the job. The top edges of the sticks are sighted, and if they are not parallel, the surface is said to be uneven or they are said to be in winding. Again, if the high levels of the job are planed, the winding strips are placed on the job and tops of the strips coincide, then the level is said to be out of winding and is perfectly flat. To check the surface for wrinkles or unevenness, breadthwise or lengthwise winding stripes are used. Necessity for checking flatness and twisted. The planed wood must be free from twist and up and down. The furniture legs will sit properly on the floor. Before selecting the wood, inspect the wood without twist and it should be flat. To find the up and down in the wood, winding strip are used. Good wood without twist and up and down used for preparing good joints. If the wood is good, the door and window can be closed properly without clearance. Task 2. Cross planing. Keep the blade sharp to plane across the grain. Set the jack play for planing. Place the job on the workbench or hold the job on the carpenter's vise with face side up. Hold the job 200 into 25 into 250 mm in the vise. Tight the job 15 mm above the vise, keeping the packing piece sidewards. Trim off the corners with firmer chisel to avoid splintering. First, plane across the grain in one edge, then plane from the other edge. Plane diagonally from one edge corner to the other. Plane towards the middle from the edges. Check flatness with tri-square and straight edge. Plane again. If high spots are found, repeat the procedure till you get a leveled surface with a measurement of 200 into 20 into 250 mm. Task 3. Edge planing. Check the measurements of the job. Start planing from one end. Trim off the corner with firmer chisel to avoid splintering. Hold the job in the vise. Before starting to plane, clamp a waste piece of wood behind the corner to avoid splintering of the job. Continue the planing till you get a leveled surface. Start planing from the other end. Continue the planing from both ends towards middle till you get a leveled surface. Remove the waste wood attached to the end. Check the leveled surface of the end with a tri-square. Repeat the same procedure for the other end. Job sequence. Test the accuracy of the flatness. Place the job on the workbench. Hold the tri-square in right hand. Test the flatness of the surface. Test the accuracy of the squareness. Place the job on the workbench. Hold the tri-square in right hand. Test the squareness of the job. Test the accuracy of the inside squareness. Place the job on the workbench. Hold the tri-square in right hand. Test the inside squareness of the job. Test the accuracy of the twistness on the surface. Place the job on the workbench. Hold the tri-square in right hand. Test the twistness of the surface. Recap. Winding strips 375 mm long, 35 mm wide and 20 mm thick. Test wooden surface flatness. Placed at opposite ends, if top edges aren't parallel, it's in winding. When planing levels, if winding strip tops coincide, it's out of winding, indicating a flat surface. Ensuring wood is twist-free is crucial for furniture legs to sit well. Cross-planing involves sharp blades, jack planes and trimming with a chisel for a level surface. Edge planing checks measurements, uses a waste piece to avoid splintering and repeats the process for both ends. This training focuses on testing flatness, squareness, inside squareness and surface twistedness. Trainees learn to use a tri-square to assess these parameters on a workbench, enhancing woodworking accuracy skills. Hope you understood everything taught in this session. See you in another video. Thank you and goodbye until then. Hello trainees. Today we are going to learn to grind and sharpen the plane blade. The objectives of this video are: after the session you will be able to grind the plane blade, sharpen the plane blade. Let's start. Job sequence. Select the jack plane. Remove cutting iron, cap iron and the wedge from the jack plane by slightly striking by hammer. Select the grinding wheel. Check the grinding wheel for cracks. Ensure that there is enough coolant in the container. Lower the protecting shield near the tool rest. Adjust the tool rest 2 mm closer to the wheel if necessary. Switch on the grinder machine. Holding the cutting bevel across of the cutting iron must be at an angle of 20 degrees to 25 degrees. Rest the body of the cutting iron on the tool rest. Allow the point to touch the wheel. Keep the pressure as minimum as possible to prevent excessive heating of the cutting bevel. Dip the cutting iron in a coolant frequently. Avoid blue color from cutting edge, icy annealing effect. Finish the grinding of cutting iron with oil stone. Place the blade until the cutting edge is parallel on the stone. Move the blade backward and forward on width of the stone until a burr is formed on the flat side of the blade. Turn the blade over and hold it perfectly flat on the stone. Rub from side to side until burr has disappeared to get fine cutting edge. Reset the cap iron, cutting iron and the wedge of jack plane. Set the cap iron and cutting iron keeping a gap of 1 mm. Sharpening of a plane blade is necessary to produce a keen cutting edge for good surface finish and perfect planing with minimum effort. Sharpening and honing. The process of sharpening is carried out on oil stone by rubbing the blade with its bevel down, maintaining a constant and correct angle 25 degrees to 30 degrees. This rubbing is continued until a burr or wire edge is produced. The burr is removed by rubbing the back of the flat face of the plane blade on the oil stone, keeping its bevel up. During sharpening, oil is used to minimize the heat caused due to friction and to float off the metal particles from the pores of the oil stone so as to prevent clogging of the oil stone. Hope you understood everything taught in this session. See you in another video. Thank you and goodbye. Until then. Hello trainees. Today we are going to learn about demonstrating the portable power planer machine and its functions. The objectives of this video are: after the session you will be able to Introduction to portable power planer, using the portable power planer machine job sequence, grinding and sharpening of blade and planer blade setting skill sequence. Let's start. Introduction to portable power planer and its working. The portable power planers are used to make sure that the surfaces are made to be smooth planed on the face side, face edge and face end. It is important that the planer should always be planing in the same direction as the grain of the wood, that is, along the direction of the grain. The proper feed rate will depend on the type of material being cut and depth of the cut. Power planes are available in sizes 50 to 125 millimeters. The proper feed rate will depend on the type of the material being cut and depth of the cut. Power planes are available in sizes 50 to 125 millimeters. Maximum width of cut the plane will make at one pass over the wood, that is, the width of the sole which equals the length of the cutting blades. Generally, two cutting blades are bolted to a cutter block which is revolved at high speed, 12,000 to 15,000 revolutions per minute, by gears or belts connected to an electric motor mounted on the body or the plane. Depth of cut up to 6 millimeters is regulated by a star wheel or knob which sides the front portion, front shoe, of the sole on an inclined plane. Most planes are fitted with a fence to guide the plane when squaring, beveling or mitring edges and ends. Bevel gauge can be fixed to either side 135 degrees to the sole. The front shoe has a rebating groove machined along the edge for 9 mm wide by 9 mm deep. Wider rebates may be produced by making 2 or more passes of the plane. Job sequence. We are going to remove and sharpen the planer blade using oil stone. Using the Allen key, we are going to set the planer blade in the cutter head. Set up the in-feed and out-feed table. Hold the job using the bench vise. Use your right hand to hold the plane and keep the index finger on the trigger switch. Hold the front handle of the plane using your left hand. Press the trigger switch on the machine. Place the machine straight on the job and give forward stroke. The machine should always be in a horizontal position. Feed the job against the cutter head for planing to the required size. Use the trigger switch to turn off the machine. Using the tri-square and the steel ruler, check the flatness and thickness of the planned wooden piece to ensure that it is of the correct dimension. We are done with the job. One important note: keep the machine on its side when not in use. Skill sequence. There are two parts to the skill sequence. 1. Grinding and sharpening of plane blade, and 2. Planer blade setting. Now let's focus on part 1. Grinding and sharpening of plane blade. Grinding. The jaws of the grinding machine are open to insert the cutter. In between the jaws of the grinding machine, the cutter is inserted. Set the cutter evenly projecting from the jaws of the grinding machine. Make sure that the cutter is extended to a distance of 10 mm to 14 mm from the jaws of the grinding machine. Set the angle of jaws to 30 degrees for grinding the cutter. The cutter has to be adjusted against the grinding wheel for it to be grinded. Turn on the machine. Move the cutter to and fro against the grinding wheel uniformly by hand. Continue the grinding till the required angle of cutter is obtained. Sharpening. The oil stone along with its block can be placed on the workbench top. Use the recommended lubrication oil while sharpening. Move the cutter backward and forward on full length with the oil stone until a burr is formed on the flat side of the cutter. The burr can be felt by rubbing lightly with a fingertip. Turn the blade over and hold it perfectly flat on the stone. Rub from side to side until burr has disappeared. Till you get fine cutting edge, continue the sharpening procedure. Planer blade setting. Setting the planer blades cutters in the slot of the cutter head, place the blade. Set the blade such that it is 3 mm outside the cutter head and parallel to the cutter head using the cutter lock. The cutter's projection needs to be checked. Tight the blade on the cutter head with bolt using Allen spanner. Test the projection of the blade edges by rotating the cutter head. Generally, 2 cutting blades are bolted to a cutting block. Precautions for planer blade setting. Check electrical and mechanical parts. Keep the lead behind the plane. Do not force the plane to cut rapidly. Let's quickly recap. We learnt about portable power planer machines and their functions. The video covers the introduction and operation of portable power planers, emphasizing the importance of planning in the direction of wood grain. The job sequence involves removing, sharpening and setting planer blades using infeed and outfeed tables and ensuring correct dimensions. The skill sequence details the grinding and sharpening of the blade along with precautions for planer blade setting. Key points include maintaining a horizontal position during operation and proper storage. Participants will gain proficiency in using portable power planers for woodworking tasks. Hope you understood everything taught in this session. See you in another video. Thank you and goodbye until. Hello trainees. Today we are going to learn about demonstrating the use of different types of chiseling along and across the grain. The objectives of this video are: after this session you'll be able to chisel and different types of chisels, chisel across the grain, mark the piece as per the drawing, chisel across the grain and along the grain. Let's start. Chisel are used for shaping and finishing the parts of wood joints. They are also used for shaping different profiles in woodwork. The size of the chisel is determined by width of the blade and type. All chisels consist of 4 main parts: the handle, the blade, tang, ferrule. The blade of a chisel is made of forged tool set. Grinding angle 20 to 25 degrees. Sharpening angle 30 to 35 degrees. Types of chisels: bench firmer chisel, bevel-edged firmer chisel, registered firmer chisel, paring chisel, socket firmer or socket mortise chisel, mortise chisel, gauge chisel. Bench firmer chisel. This is used for general chiseling purposes. Strongly made, it can be used for light chiseling with a mallet. The blade is rectangular in the cross section. The handle is made of beech or ash wood. It has a brass ferrule. Tang is fixed inside the ferrule. It is available from 3 mm to 50 mm. Bevel-edged firmer chisel. It is more convenient for lighter works and paring works, and in places where ordinary firmer chisel cannot be used, such as cleaning up corners and joints. Bevel-edged firmer chisel has two edges beveled along its length, which makes it lighter and the edges thinner. Size varies from 3 mm to 50 mm. Registered firmer chisel. It is used for heavy work such as mortising. The use of mallet is necessary here. It is stronger than ordinary firmer chisel. It has a thicker blade and iron ferrule at both sides of handle. A leather washer is provided between the shoulder of the blade and the handle to act as shock absorber when the chisel is hit by the mallet. Paring chisel. It is most suitable for all paring work such as finishing off joints. It has an extra long thin blade with beveled edges. It should never be used with a mallet. The handle is made of beech and octagonal in section. Size varies from 3 mm to 50 mm. Socket firmer or socket mortise chisel. It is used for extra heavy work. The blade is thicker and stronger than other chisels. It is able to withstand the blows of the mallet and level out the cover of mortises. The ash handle provided with ferrule is fitted in the socket in the blade. Size varies from 3 mm to 50 mm. Gauge chisel. Chisels are blades of circular section called as gauges or hollow chisels. According to the position of the cutting bevel on the blade, there are two main types: inside beveled gauge, outside beveled firmer gauge, and scribing gauge. Mortise chisel. The mortise chisel is designed to withstand hard, rough wear, and the thickness of the blade permits the leverage necessary to clear the mortise and keep the blade true. It has strong handle and the blade is fitted into it by a tang as with the socket and tang chisel. 54 common sizes of mortise chisels are 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20 mm in width. The chisel blade is ground slightly taper from the face towards the back and from the cutting edge towards the handle to avoid friction. Mortise chisels are used mainly for chopping mortises and are driven with heavy blows of the mallet. The sash mortise chisels have a tough leather washer between the shoulder of the tang and the handle to help absorb the shock of repeated blows. Precautions to take before using the chisel. Never hold your hand or finger before the cutting edge. Never use a chisel without a proper handle. Chiseling across the grain. Grind and sharpen the firmer chisel. Plane the job to the required size of 50 into 22 into 150 mm. Hold the job on the vise and check it with tri-square for its flatness. With tri-square, mark out lines at a distance 50 mm and 100 from left side. With marking knife and tri-square, mark out lines at a distance of 50 mm and 100 from left side. Hold the tenon saw on the line marked and saw it to a 50 mm and 100 mm from left side. Repeat the procedure for the other side. Saw it to a depth of 11 mm. Hold the firmer chisel in your right hand on the handle and guide the blade with left hand. Control the movement of the chisel with thumb and forefinger. Push it on the space to be cut. Start a chiseling away from you at the bevel of the chisel turned upwards. Start a chiseling away from you, the bevel of the chisel turned upwards. Chisel in an inclined direction up to the middle of the portion. Reverse the workpiece so that the backside comes to front and hold in the vise. Chisel the waste material away from you up to the middle portion. Repeat the chiseling. Start chiseling slowly to make flat portion. Repeat the procedure for the other side. Saw it to a depth of 10 mm. Smooth the bottom and side walls with firmer chisels. Finish the job. Chiseling across the grain and along the grain. Check the raw material for its size. Plane the job to the required size of 50 x 22 x 290 mm. Mark the measurement on the job as per the drawing. Hold the job in the vise. Cut the shoulder line down to the center line, depth 11 mm with tenon saw. Keep the tenon saw at 90 degrees to ensure cutting at right angles. Cut on the waist side of the shoulder line. With the tenon saw, make several saw cuts in between the shoulder lines almost to the center line. Place the job flat on the workbench. With the help of firmer chisel and mallet, remove the surplus material on both sides, preventing splitting of wood. Chisel out excess wood little by little starting from the top and bottom. Smooth the bottom trench portion with firmer chisel. Repeat it for the other trenches also. Marking for chiseling. Observe the provided drawing. Hold the job 160 x 60 x 25 on the bench or vise. Plane it to size 160 x 50 x 22. With tri-square and steel rule, mark 5 mm, 55 mm, 105 mm and 155 mm from one end of the job. Hold the stock of the tri-square closely in contact with the face edge and mark lines with marking knife and wooden rule at the distance of 5 mm, 55 mm, 105 mm and 155 mm on all four sides. Set the marking gauge to 11 mm and scribe on the middle of face edge and its opposite side. Let's quickly recap. In this training session, participants will learn about using different types of chisels for woodwork, covering chiseling along and across the grain. The objectives include understanding various chisel types, chiseling techniques, and marking methods. Types of chisels discussed include bench firmer, bevel edge firmer, registered firmer, barring, socket firmer, and mortise chisels. Precautions for chisel use are highlighted. The tutorial demonstrates chiseling across the grain, providing step-by-step instructions and extends to chiseling along the grain. It concludes with marking procedures for chiseling. Participants will gain proficiency in using chisels for shaping, finishing, and creating wood joints. Hope you understood everything taught in this session. See you in another video. Thank you and goodbye until then.
अरे गीता, तुम मेरे घर आई ये तो बहुत अच्छी बात है। वास्तव में मुझे इंटरनेट के बारे में कई महत्वपूर्ण बातों को समझने में तुम्हारी मदद की जरूरत है।
जरूर चाचा, मैं यहाँ आपकी मदद और मार्गदर्शन के लिए आई हूँ।
देखो गीता, जब मुझे ट्रेन से कहीं जाना होता है तो